Hey Cowork, I am hungover. What are we supposed to be doing today? Finalize outline for workshop, dinner, newsletter, right. Review expenses. How much did I spend last month? Process last month's credit card statement. My spending's about 1,000%, mainly from Bumble Premium. Good job throwing money away while not landing a single. That's unnecessarily harsh. Did I really spend that much? Oh, all right. Moving on. Finalize my next newsletter using my tone of voice and just link me to the Notion page. I'm too hungover to do anything today. Okay, final copy under final copy section. All right, let's open the link. Okay, this is my rough draft up here and final copy. You probably missed tip one. All right, not bad, not bad. Okay. Not bad. That was easy. I'm going back to bed. Thanks. Oh my God. Going back to bed alone. What the f? All right, I'm not actually hungover, but what Cowork did is real, and it's insane what it can do with the right setup. And in this video, I'll walk you through how to build that setup without burning through your rate limits. Let's get started. So how did Cowork actually do all of that? Let me show you what happened behind the scenes. Here you can see I named my parent folder iCloud OS because, get it? It's supposed to be iCloud, but we're using Claude, so it's iCloud. I'm so funny. Anyways, whenever I start a new session, Cowork will always first read this claude.md file, which is essentially a set of master rules for Cowork. Then Cowork will read the memory.md file to remember what we did last time. So these two files together, claudemd and memory.md, run my entire Cowork workspace. And here's the single most important takeaway from this video. These are just simple text files. So don't be intimidated. If I click this open, you're like, oh my God, this looks like code. It's not. I can select all this text, copy, open up any Notes app, paste, and I'm just gonna scroll all the way back up. And all of a sudden, you realize it's not that scary. Header 1, Jeff's Cowork Hub. This is the central hub for all projects, planning, and work sessions. And underneath, it's simple text. The crazy thing is, you don't even need to write any of this text yourself because Cowork writes all of this for you. And by the end of this video, you'll see just how simple this system is. For example, within my root claude.md file, there is an instruction here that says, at the start of every session, read memory.md before responding. So let's open up the memory.md file. And what do you know? There is a section right at the top here called Active Projects and Work, followed by a list of all the active projects I'm working on. That's how Cowork knows what I'm working on right now. It's the same idea with my tone of voice. Within the claude.md file, there's a section called Content and Production, where the rule is saying, hey, read this Jeff's voice principles markdown file before outputting anything to Jeff, right? And that's how my newsletter goes from rough talking points to a final draft sounding like me. In plain English, claude.md is the instruction manual that tells Cowork how to behave, and it points to other files whenever it needs more detail. That's it. That's the entire system. To really help you understand, here's a simple analogy. The United States is governed by a set of countrywide laws called the US Constitution that apply to every person in every state, theoretically. This is level 0, the root level. Countrywide laws. Moving one level down, we have state laws. For example, California has its own laws that help tech billionaires get even richer, and New York, not to be outdone, has New York state laws helping the finance billionaires get even richer. I'm just kidding with the laws, obviously. Not really. But the point is, every state has state level laws that stack on top of the US Constitution. So a business in California is bound by the countrywide constitution plus California state law. Here's how this maps to our Cowork workspace. The root claude.md file is the constitution that governs the entire workspace. And one level below, we have individual workstations like Email HQ, Newsletter HQ, and Personal Finances that each have workstation-specific instructions that stack on top of the root level instructions. Put simply, the rules in my newsletter HQ workstation only apply when I'm working on my newsletter, but the root level rules apply no matter what I'm doing. We can extend this one level further to project-specific rules that apply to a single project. But we'll keep things simple today and just focus on the top 2 levels. Now that you have the full picture, let's start building at level 0, the root level. First, create a folder in your documents and name it Cowork OS. And because I'm such an angel, I've prepared 3 starter templates for you: a claude.md file, a memory.md file, and a voiceprinciples.md file with the exact structure I use myself, all linked below. Pro tip, open up each one of the MD files, go to File, Download, Markdown to make sure you're downloading in the right format. After downloading the files, drop the Claude MD and Memory MD files into your root folder. Then create a 00_resources folder, and within this folder, move the voiceprinciples.md file over. We can now go back to Cowork and select the parent folder we just created right here, Cowork OS. And after we open it, we click Always Allow. And we can even go ahead and star this so that Cowork defaults to this folder every time we start a new session. Just so we're 100% clear, the claude.md file is the instruction manual that tells Cowork how to behave. The memory.md file is like a notepad that stores things Cowork should remember between sessions. And the root resources folder contains detailed knowledge that Cowork only loads when it needs to. Pro tip, install the free app Obsidian, and under Open Folder as Vault, we can click Open and locate the Cowork OS folder we just created. Click Open, and now we can simply view the claude.md and memory.md files in a more readable format. Don't worry, you don't have to learn how to use Obsidian. I don't know how to use Obsidian. We're just using it to read the markdown files. Clicking into the root claude.md file, there are 3 things I want to highlight here. First, under memory system, right up top, there's a line that says, at the start of every session, read memory.md before responding. And there's a rule after that that says, when I say remember this, write the information to memory.md. And these 2 sentences are why Cowork has persistent memory. Second, the routing map section contains a table that tells Cowork which workstation folder to load for which type of task. We haven't built any workstations yet, but when we do later on this video, this is where they'll be all listed. And third, references. These are pointers to files in our root 00 resources folder that Cowork only reads when it needs to. This is one of the ways to keep token usage low. By the way, I had to cut a lot of detail to keep this video within 20 minutes, but I go a lot deeper and share more templates in my free Cowork toolkit, so I'll leave a link to that down below as well. Moving on to the memory.md file, we have 2 sections here, active projects and memory. Starting with the memory section, this is where Cowork will automatically add entries when you tell it to remember something. For example, in a new session, I type, current events are distracting everyone from the E-list. Remember that. And Cowork will add that to the root memory file as a new entry. First, you can see that under the memory section, Cowork has added a new entry right here. And to test this out, we can even start a new session and ask, what did I say about distractions recently? And after a few seconds, which I will fast forward, Cowork will draw from its memory and answer correctly. Back in our memory.md file, the active project section works the same way. Just tell Cowork about projects you're actively working on, and it'll add both the project and the progress of that project right here. Moving on to the resources folder, we can now start building out our voice principles file. So assuming you watched my first Cowork video and you connected your Cowork to Gmail via connectors right here, what you want to do is go ahead and grab this prompt template that I've linked below. It's the same link. You want to paste this, option 1, Gmail connected prompt template into a new session within Cowork. Press enter. And what this does is Cowork is now going to extract writing patterns from your last 30 sent emails to build your voice profile. If you haven't connected Gmail, find 5 writing samples that you like, could be yours or someone else's, and simply paste the prompt template under option 2, no Gmail connected, and it does the same thing. After a few minutes, Cowork will tell you that the voice principles file has been updated, and we can click into the voice principles markdown file to see all the patterns it has extracted. For example, I apparently talk in a warm, direct, and professional tone of voice without being stiff. Cowork will just add more entries as it learns more about your preferences. And just for reference, my actual voice principles file is actually over 150 lines long. By the way, the reason I keep saying root Claude MD, root memory MD, and root resources folder is because each workstation below that root level gets their own Claude MD resources folder and memory MD. But before we get to workstations, everything we built today revolves around one important concept: relevant context. And that's something I learned firsthand from today's sponsor, Coursera. Longtime viewers know I took Google's AI Essentials specialization on Coursera and made an entire video about it. And the one learning that stuck with me all this time is how surfacing implied context is the key to getting better AI outputs. Implied context is the stuff you inherently know, but forget to tell the AI every time. Your writing style, your active projects, how you like your email structured. That's the whole point of Claude MD and Memory MD. They remember it for you, so Cowork always has the full picture. The AI Essentials course covers everything from how AI actually works to practical frameworks you can apply immediately. And it's taught by actual Google instructors and not random influencers. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Click the link below to get 40% off Coursera Plus, and thank you Coursera for sponsoring this video. All right, so we've covered the root level, and going one level down is workstations. And these are basically areas of your life, each with its own Claude.md file, memory.md file, and resources folder. Broadly speaking, there are two types of workstations. Universal workstations handle things you do across every area of your life. Email is the clearest example. You email your team, your accountant, your sponsors, your friends, so the rules for how you write email apply across multiple workstations. Dedicated workstations handle one specific area of your life. For example, within personal finances, I manage my spending, my savings, and my tax deadlines. Now let's start by creating a universal workstation, Email HQ. I first grab the prompt template from the same link below where you downloaded the starter templates and go to the Email HQ video prompt. And then you're gonna copy this, head on back to your Claude Cowork and paste it in and click enter. And we're just gonna let this run for a minute or two, and I'm gonna fast forward this next part. All right, now that it's done, let's walk through what the prompt just did. First, this step one, it triggered a rule inside our root Claude MD. So let's just open that up. Under our root Claude MD, we have a creating new workstations section that say, whenever I ask for a new workstation, create a subfolder with that name and add a Claude MD, Memory MD, and empty resources folder inside. Then step two, the prompt's own instructions kick in. Similar to the previous example, it basically says to search my Gmail sent folder for the last 4 weeks of emails, then analyze and extract only email-specific patterns that aren't covered by my root voice principles, for example, like greeting and sign-offs, right? And once you have those patterns, add them to the editorial rules section of my Email HQ, Claude MD. Now, in both our Cowork OS parent folder and within Obsidian, we can see that Cowork has created a Email HQ workstation along with a Claude MD and Memory MD file and a empty Email HQ resources folder. And if we open up the Email HQ Claude MD, we see that under editorial rules, Cowork knows to first follow my voice principles in the global voice principles.md file, and knows that the rules below layer on top with email-specific conventions, like my default greeting, my default sign-off, etc. So just to be clear, this is where the rule stacking comes in. The next time Cowork writes an email, it will first read my voice principles markdown document to see that I'm warm, direct, and professional, and I lead with transparency, right? And then it'll read my Email HQ Claude MD file to understand my email-specific preferences. And that's how my emails sound like me and follow my email conventions. Now, if I open my actual Email HQ Claude MD, you'll see that I actually taught Cowork my inbox zero workflow, meaning it knows about the 2-minute rule, what labels I use and why, when to archive, when to snooze emails, and it just works perfectly. If you want my complete system with pre-built workstation templates and a step-by-step walkthrough so you can skip the trial and error of building from scratch, I'm putting together a Cowork Academy course, and you can sign up for the waitlist down below. Moving on to dedicated workstations. These workstations handle one specific area of your life. Unlike email, which touches everything, your personal finances live in their own world, right? Their own rules, their own context, their own memory. So first, with the Cowork OS folder mounted, I share the past 12 months of my credit card statements, and then I grab the personal finances prompt template from the same link below where you got all the other templates, and you paste it into Cowork, and then you let it run. While that's working, before I get flooded with questions about data privacy, it's just personal preference, okay? I'm fine with sharing my credit card statements with Cowork. If you're not, don't. It's literally that simple. All right, it's done. Let's walk through what happened. First, similar to the Email HQ example, the prompt created a personal finances workstation folder along with a personal finances ClaudeMD and memory.md and an empty resources folder inside. Second, Cowork read every transaction across my statements, broke down the spending by category, and built a master spending tracker spreadsheet inside my personal finances resources folder right here. And we can click into preview. We can see that it created 4 tabs: transactions, yearly summary, monthly summary, and category taxonomy. And let's say Cowork made a few classification mistakes. For example, this one, Canva, should not be freelancer and contractors. It should be software and subscription, right? That's totally fine, because after I correct Cowork once, telling it, hey, Canva's actually subscriptions and software, it will remember that for next time, and next month's expenses will be categorized correctly. Pro tip, Obsidian only indexes markdown files, so the Excel file is invisible in the sidebar here, even though it obviously exists on disk, right? So just remember that the Cowork OS folder is a single source of truth when it comes to saved documents. Now, after building almost 30 workstations, I can tell you it's best to start slow. Build 2 or 3 workstations out, get used to how the ClaudeMD and memory.md files all interact and work together, and only build new workstations when the need comes up. One thing to note before we move on, under my dedicated workstations, I also have project subfolders. For example, under my housing workstation, I have a project for refinancing my mortgage. Under travel, I have one project folder for every planned trip this year. Under speaking engagements, I have a project for an upcoming corporate workshop. Each project gets its own ClaudeMD, memory.md, and resources folder. So it's the same underlying logic here, all right? And if you want to get into more detail, sign up for the free Cowork Toolkit. All right, now let me quickly walk through a few of my use cases so you know what's possible once everything is set up. Let's say I come across a copywriting framework I know I'll use at some point. I can simply take a screenshot, paste it into Cowork, and say, I feel like this should be saved somewhere. Figure it out for me. And thanks to the routing map in my root claude.md, Cowork knows that this belongs within my existing copywriting frameworks file. Another simple example, within my Email HQ ClaudeMD, there is a rule that says, before drafting any email, search Gmail for existing threads with the recipient on the same topic, right? Since I hate it when people start new threads for no reason. On to a more intermediate example, I can tell Cowork, hey, I just finished a meeting, so draft a follow-up email to all recipients. And I won't waste your time here, but basically Cowork knows to pull the latest event from my calendar, go to the meeting transcripts folder, read the transcript and realizes it's related to an upcoming corporate training, load the speaking engagements workstation, and drafts a follow-up email to my client that adheres to the rules from my Email HQ workstation. This is the power of Claude Cowork. Last example, I can tell Cowork, hey, I'm going to Boston from July 17th to 24th for a wedding, set up a project in Notion. And because Cowork knows all my Notion conventions found under my command center claude.md, it creates the project page and fills out every property and every section in Notion exactly how I'd want it. I chose a travel project for simplicity, but every project Cowork creates follows the exact same process. Fill out the properties, fill out the project page, create a notes thread to track progress, all because I taught Cowork my rules once. Moving on to 2 pro tips that will save you time and money. First, whenever I'm done working with a session in Cowork, I type /session audit. And this triggers Cowork to scan the entire conversation and look for unsaved principles and preferences it needs to remember for next time. I've included a starter session audit skill in the link below. So all you have to do is download it. And then after that's downloaded, head on over to your Cowork Workspace, customize, skills, plus, create a skill, upload a skill, and simply just select the starter session audit skill, click open. And after it gets mounted, assuming that you finished the entire conversation, at the end of a session, you can just simply say either / starter session audit, or say before we wrap, audit this session. Both works. Pro tip number 2 addresses a tiny problem you may or may not have noticed: Claude's usage limits. So here are 3 ways to keep token usage low without sacrificing quality. First, keep your root claude.md file within 300 lines. And this is because Cowork loads the root claude.md by default in every session. You want to keep that file as lean as possible by pointing to other resource files only when the situation calls for it. 2, don't repeat the same rule in multiple files. For example, my root voice principles has rules like no corporate jargon, never bury the lead, right? So I do not restate those rules inside my email HQ ClaudeMD. And instead, email HQ only focuses on email specific preferences like thread first drafting. And 3, default to the Sonnet model because 80% of the time, Sonnet is more than enough and it's a 1/5 of the cost of Opus. So only switch to Opus when the task has 3 or more steps that all depend on each other. I've been making videos for 6+ years now and I've never fear-mongered, so I don't say this lightly. But you need to start building a system like this today. It doesn't have to be on Claude because Google and OpenAI will definitely come up with Cowork equivalents. You don't even have to use my templates or take my course. But you do need to start building this personal context system as soon as possible because the rules, the memory, the patterns compound every single session. And you will always be ahead of someone who starts even a day after you. For my part, I'm gonna make a lot more Cowork tutorials, so I recommend you bookmark this Cowork playlist. See you on the next video. In the meantime, have a great one.